Hello and welcome back to JBC English Learning Academy. My name is Laura, and I'm here to guide you on your journey to clear, confident, and natural English. If you're new here, make sure to hit the subscribe button so you never miss a lesson. Your support truly helps this channel grow. Alright, take a deep breath, relax, and let's begin today's session. Have you ever noticed that some people walk into a room and immediately feel like they belong? Like they own the moment without saying a word? I used to wonder about them when I was younger, watching their calm, confident smiles. I remember one rainy afternoon when I first truly understood what confidence could do. I was walking down a small street near my old school, carrying a heavy backpack filled with books I didn't even need. I saw a tiny cafe tucked in between two large buildings. Its door was painted a deep blue, with golden letters that read, "Step in, find yourself." It sounded strange, almost magical, like a story waiting to begin. I didn't even know why, but I walked inside. Inside, there was a man sitting behind a counter with soft music floating in the air. He looked up and smiled warmly. There was no question in his expression, just a calm presence. And for some reason, I felt nervous. My heart beat faster, my hands slightly trembling. I realized that every step I had taken in life felt like it was measured by fear of failing, fear of being judged, fear of not being good enough. The man behind the counter noticed my hesitation. He said simply, "Confidence isn't about being loud. It's about trusting yourself when no one is watching." I paused, not fully understanding. How could confidence be quiet? How could it feel invisible yet powerful? I sat at a table, staring at my cup of tea, thinking about every moment I had let fear control my choices. And I wondered, what if I could change that? What if I could find a way to step into life with calm certainty, just like him? Over the next few minutes, the man told me a story. A story about a young boy who had been afraid of speaking in class, afraid of trying new things. And then one day, he started taking small steps, asking one question in class, greeting someone new, finishing a project even if it wasn't perfect. The boy discovered something incredible. Each small act built confidence slowly, quietly, but steadily. Confidence was like a muscle. If you never used it, it stayed weak. But every small action made it stronger. That day, I realized the first secret of confidence. It starts with tiny steps. Not giant leaps. Not perfect performance. Just small, consistent choices that show yourself, "I can do this." I left the cafe feeling light, almost as if I had left a piece of fear behind and carried a small flame of courage forward. And here is the challenge for you. Notice your small steps today. Did you greet someone you usually wouldn't? Did you try speaking English even if it felt hard? Each of these moments is your confidence growing. A week later, I stood in front of a mirror, staring at my reflection for a long time. Mirrors are strange. They don't lie, but they also don't tell the whole truth. I saw my face, my expression, my hesitation, and something deeper, a voice that kept repeating, "You're not ready. You're not enough." I knew I needed to face that voice, to confront the fears I had hidden for years. So, I began a small experiment. Every morning, I would look into the mirror and say, "I am capable. I can speak. I can act. I can try." At first, it felt strange, almost ridiculous. My voice wavered. My eyes avoided mine. But after a few days, something shifted. I started noticing small changes, not in my reflection, but in the way I walked, the way I spoke to people, the way I handled small challenges. One morning, I went to a busy market, a place that used to make me anxious. I needed to ask a vendor something in English. Normally, I would hesitate, thinking I might make a mistake. But that morning, I remembered the tiny flame of courage from the cafe. I walked up, smiled, and said the question. The vendor answered kindly. I smiled, thanked him, and walked away feeling an unusual warmth in my chest. It was simple. It was ordinary. Yet it was a victory. Confidence, I realized, isn't a sudden transformation. It's a series of tiny victories against the quiet fears that linger inside. And the mirror isn't just about seeing your face, it's about seeing your courage. Every time you acknowledge it, even a little, you make it stronger. Take a moment today. Look into the mirror. Speak to yourself. Practice your English. Ask yourself, what small victory can I win today? You will be surprised how much this builds your confidence, slowly but surely. Confidence and language are strangely connected. I learned this the hard way when I moved to a new city, surrounded by people who spoke English fluently. I remember sitting in a cafe, listening to conversations around me. Words flew fast, and I struggled to keep up. I felt invisible, unsure. I wanted to speak, but fear whispered, "What if you make a mistake?" Then I remembered something. Confidence is not about being perfect. It is about speaking, listening, and trying, even if you make mistakes. I decided to challenge myself. Every day, I would join conversations, even tiny ones. I would ask simple questions, answer with short sentences, and listen carefully. At first, it was painful. I stumbled. People corrected me. I felt embarrassed. But each small interaction slowly built a bridge between my fear and my courage. My words began to flow more naturally. My voice grew steadier. And something amazing happened. I started enjoying English. Not just as a language, but as a tool to connect, to express, to share. Here is the key for you. Every time you speak English, no matter how small, you exercise your confidence. Every time you listen carefully and respond, you grow stronger. Confidence and language go hand in hand. One cannot grow without the other. Think about this. Tomorrow, try speaking to someone in English. Ask a question, share a thought, or even make a small mistake. Each effort is a step forward, building your skill and courage together. The next lesson came from failure, something I used to fear above all else. I remember preparing for a presentation, practicing for hours, imagining every word, every gesture. On the day of the presentation, I froze. My mind went blank. My voice shook. I wanted to disappear. I felt like a complete failure. Afterward, I sat alone, devastated. But slowly, I began to see something new. Failure isn't the opposite of confidence. It is part of confidence. Every time we fail, we learn. Every time we stumble, we discover a new strength. Every mistake is a lesson disguised as discomfort. I decided to embrace failure as a friend rather than an enemy. I practiced again, tried again, and slowly, the fear of failure lost its power. Confidence grew, not because I was perfect, but because I was willing to face challenges over and over. And here is your takeaway. Do not fear mistakes. Speak English, try new things, take risks. Each small failure is secretly a step towards stronger confidence. After months of small victories, mirror exercises, and conversations in English, I realized something important. Confidence is not just about yourself. It is about how you step into the world, how you show up for life, even when it feels uncertain. One morning, I walked into a large auditorium filled with people from many countries. My heart raced, but I remembered the lessons I had learned: small steps, facing fear, embracing failure, and speaking even if imperfect. I had been invited to share a simple story in English about my journey of confidence. At first, the words felt heavy, like stones in my mouth. My hands shook slightly, but I took a deep breath and started. I spoke about the tiny cafe, the mirror exercises, the small conversations, and even the failures. And as I spoke, something magical happened. People smiled. They nodded. They listened. Not because I was perfect, but because I was honest. I was brave enough to try. Confidence, I realized that day, is not about impressing others. It is about showing up, sharing your truth, and trusting that your voice matters. Every small act of courage, every sentence you speak in English, every question you ask, every attempt to express yourself, is a step into the world as a confident person. I encourage you now to think about your own world. Where can you step forward today? Is it speaking to a new classmate? Joining an English conversation online? Writing a short paragraph about your day? Remember, confidence grows when you move outward, when you engage with life, when you take your small victories and carry them into action. Finally, let's reflect on everything we've learned. Confidence is not a gift, it is a skill. It is built with small steps, one moment at a time. It grows when you face your fears, when you practice speaking, when you accept failure as a teacher. It shines in the quiet moments when no one is watching, and it becomes visible when you step into the world. Think about your own journey. What small step did you take today? Did you speak a sentence in English? Did you try something that scared you, even a little? Each of these actions is your confidence growing. Each choice is proof that you can change, slowly but surely. I want to leave you with a simple exercise. Every day, for the next week, do one thing that challenges your comfort zone. Speak one sentence in English to someone. Share one idea. Try one new thing. Notice how it feels. Notice the small victories. And write them down. When you see your progress on paper, you will realize how much confidence you are building quietly, steadily, like a tree growing toward the sky. Remember, confidence is not loud. It is not perfect. It is patient, it is gentle, and it is persistent. The real change does not happen in a single moment, but in the accumulation of many small, brave steps. You are capable. You are strong. You can grow. So take a deep breath. Smile at your reflection. Speak that sentence in English. Step into the world, one confident step at a time. And remember, every small effort is a victory, every attempt is a building block, and every moment is a chance to practice your English while growing your confidence. Thank you so much for joining today's lesson here at JBC English Learning Academy. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment below telling me what you want to learn next. Your support helps the channel grow and helps me create more lessons for you. Take care, keep practicing, and I'll see you in the next class. The next morning, Emma woke up feeling calm and reflective. She made her favorite cup of tea, sat by the window, and thought about everything she had experienced over the past few days. From her very first morning, sitting quietly with a cup of tea, to speaking English with strangers, joining online and in-person groups, visiting the library, and attending her first social gathering, Emma realized she had learned much more than just words. She had learned courage, patience, and curiosity. She had learned how to face fear, embrace mistakes, and practice actively every day. As she sipped her tea, Emma thought about the small victories that had led to big changes. Ordering coffee for the first time, asking questions when she didn't understand, repeating sentences aloud, listening carefully, and speaking slowly, all these actions had built her confidence. She understood that language learning was not about perfection. It was about effort, consistency, and engagement. Emma opened her notebook and began to write a summary of her journey. English is not just words. English is communication, connection, and courage. Every mistake is a lesson. Every conversation is practice. Listening carefully helps me understand. Speaking slowly helps me be clear. Small steps lead to big progress. Every day I speak, I listen, I repeat, I learn. I am growing. She paused and smiled, realizing how far she had come. Emma knew that the journey would continue, and there would always be new challenges, new words, and new experiences. But she also knew that she had built strong foundations, the ability to face fear, the patience to learn from mistakes, and the habit of practicing regularly. Later that day, Emma decided to practice storytelling. She imagined sharing a story with a group of friends. She spoke slowly, using clear sentences, repeating phrases, and paying attention to rhythm and intonation. Yesterday, I went to the park. I listened to people talking and tried to understand. I repeated phrases aloud. I even spoke to a stranger about books. I was nervous, but I did it. Every step made me stronger. She realized that telling stories was not just practice, it was a way to connect, to share, and to enjoy the language. Emma also reflected on the importance of listening. She had learned to focus on keywords, context, and tone. She had discovered that gestures, repetition, and pauses helped understanding. Listening carefully was just as important as speaking clearly. By evening, Emma felt calm, proud, and motivated. She had transformed from a shy beginner into someone who could face real-life situations with courage, clarity, and curiosity. She wrote her final takeaway in the notebook: learning English is a journey. It is not about perfection. It is about courage, curiosity, patience, and practice. Every conversation, every mistake, every effort is a step forward. Listen carefully. Speak slowly. Ask questions. Enjoy the process. Progress comes every day. That night, as Emma prepared for bed, she whispered to herself, "I am ready for the next adventure. I am growing, learning, and improving. English is part of my life now. Every word, every sentence, every conversation makes me stronger. I am confident. I am capable. I am fluent, step by step." Emma closed her notebook, feeling a deep sense of accomplishment. Her journey had begun with a single, small step, and it had grown into a path of discovery, learning, and self-confidence. She had learned that English was more than a language. It was a tool for connection, expression, and growth. And with that thought, she drifted into a peaceful sleep, inspired and ready to continue her journey with courage, curiosity, and joy. Emma woke up with a feeling of quiet pride. She had come a long way since that first morning when she simply sat at her desk with a cup of tea, whispering sentences to herself. Now she could listen, speak, and even participate in conversations with real people. She made a cup of tea, sat by the window, and thought about everything she had experienced: the cafe, the park, online sessions, group conversations, the library, and the social gathering. Each moment had been a small step, a challenge, and a lesson. Emma realized that progress in English was not about perfection. It was about effort, courage, curiosity, and persistence. She remembered the first time she had struggled to order a coffee, the first online session where she hesitated to speak, the group conversation where voices overlapped, and the library where she asked strangers for help. Each challenge had taught her something important. Mistakes were opportunities, questions were tools, listening was powerful, and speaking slowly and clearly built confidence. Emma decided to practice her advanced conversational skills that morning. She opened her notebook and imagined new scenarios, talking about her favorite book, describing a recent movie, explaining a personal experience, and sharing an opinion. She spoke each sentence aloud slowly, clearly, and with expression. I recently read a novel about a young woman who travels the world. The story was exciting and full of lessons. I learned about courage and curiosity. I recommend it to anyone who wants to feel inspired. Emma repeated the sentences, paying attention to intonation, rhythm, and flow. She imagined herself speaking to friends, to strangers, and in a group conversation. She noticed how her voice had become stronger, her sentences smoother, and her confidence greater. Later, she reflected on listening. She practiced with a short story in English, pausing, repeating, and trying to predict what might happen next. She realized that active listening was not just about understanding words, but about connecting ideas, noticing emotions, and anticipating responses. Emma thought about the transformation she had experienced. At first, speaking English had felt scary, confusing, and even frustrating. Now, she could face real situations with courage. She could ask questions when she didn't understand. She could listen carefully, follow conversations, and respond naturally. She felt proud of the effort she had put in, day by day, step by step. Writing in her notebook, she summarized her journey. I was nervous at first. I made mistakes. I felt shy and unsure. But I practiced, listened, and spoke slowly. I asked questions. I joined conversations. I learned from mistakes. I became more confident. English is not perfect words. It is connection, courage, and curiosity. Every day I speak, listen, and learn, I grow stronger. Emma realized that learning English was also teaching her patience, persistence, and self-compassion. She no longer compared herself to others. She no longer judged herself for small mistakes. Instead, she focused on progress, curiosity, and enjoyment. That afternoon, Emma practiced a new conversation scenario. She imagined explaining her favorite hobby to a group. I enjoy reading books about different cultures. Reading helps me understand people, places, and ideas. It also helps me improve my English. I like discussing what I learn with friends, sharing opinions, and listening to their ideas. She spoke slowly, with pauses for emphasis, repeating key phrases, and noticing her improvement in fluency and clarity. Emma smiled. She realized that storytelling was a powerful way to practice English. By sharing experiences, expressing feelings, and describing situations, she could improve vocabulary, pronunciation, and natural speech flow. By evening, Emma felt a deep sense of satisfaction. She had faced challenges, learned from mistakes, practiced speaking and listening, and grown in confidence. She knew the journey was not over, but she also knew that each day brought progress, and each effort added up. As she closed her notebook, she whispered to herself, I am proud of my progress. I am learning, I am growing, and I am becoming confident. English is part of my journey, part of my life, and part of my connection with the world. Every step counts, every word matters, every conversation helps me grow. That night, Emma went to sleep feeling calm, inspired, and ready for the next adventure. She had discovered not just how to speak and listen in English, but also the joy of learning, the value of persistence, and the power of curiosity. Her journey was just beginning, but she knew that with each day, she was becoming stronger, more confident, and more fluent. It is a long relationship with yourself, and we're only at the beginning. But before we move into the next part of this story, I want you to take one idea from this section, one simple idea that you can carry with you, just like a small stone in your pocket, and that idea is this: start small, start today, because even the smallest step, when repeated, can change your whole life. And as the music of your mind slowly settles, as you breathe in and out, I want to remind you that you are not alone in this journey. You and I will walk together through this story, through this lesson, through this practice, step by step, word by word, and this is the end of section 1 of our long story at JBC English Learning Academy, where simple English becomes a path to confidence, growth, and gentle discipline. When Daniel reached his 4th week of practicing English every day, something gentle but important began to change in his life, something so quiet that he almost didn't notice it at first, but it was there, slowly shaping his mornings, his evenings, and even the way he carried himself through the day, because routine has a soft and invisible power, a power that discipline creates without loud effort. And as he continued with his small 5-minute rule, he found that the hardest part of learning English was no longer the studying itself, but the thinking he used to do before studying, all the questions like, do I have time? Or do I feel like it? Or should I skip today? Those questions used to drain him. They used to make learning feel heavy, as if every day he had to climb a hill before he even began. But because his promise was small and easy, something strange happened. The questions disappeared, and without those questions, learning became lighter, almost peaceful, and one morning, while he was pouring water into a cup to make coffee, he realized that his body already knew what to do. He did not have to plan or push. He simply reached for his headphones, pressed play on a short English story, and began listening. And this moment surprised him because it felt automatic, like muscle memory, and he wondered how something that used to be so difficult had become so natural. And as he walked to work, he thought about how different this felt from motivation, because motivation always came with pressure, with excitement, with expectation, but discipline came with calm, with rhythm, with softness, and this was the first time he truly understood the quiet power of routine, the power that grows when you repeat something small every day. And he smiled because he remembered how many times he had tried to force himself in the past, how many times he started with strong motivation, only to lose it soon afterward. And he realized something important, something that most people never learn. Motivation is loud, but discipline is quiet, and the quiet wins in the long run. And as he listened to the English story, he noticed something else, something he had not seen coming. He was beginning to understand more without thinking too hard. His brain was starting to recognize patterns, phrases, and everyday expressions, and this made him feel light inside, because he could actually see progress, not big progress, not dramatic progress, just small, natural progress. Like watching a plant grow a little taller every morning, and he enjoyed the feeling, not in a proud way, but in a peaceful way. And during his lunch break that day, he decided to sit on a small bench outside his office building, the air warm around him, the sound of cars in the distance, and he opened a simple English transcript on his phone and read along while listening again to the same story. and he noticed that reading while listening made everything even clearer, and he felt grateful for this moment, for the sunlight, for the quiet bench, for the chance to learn, because learning no longer felt like a task. It felt like something he wanted to do, and when he finished his lunch and returned to work, he realized that discipline had given him a gift he didn't expect. Learning English was now connected to comfort, not pressure, and that changed everything. And one evening, when he arrived home feeling tired after a long day, he sat on his couch and closed his eyes, telling himself he deserved rest, and old habits almost pulled him towards skipping his English practice. But then he heard a calm voice inside him, a voice that said, "Just 5 minutes," and those 3 simple words changed his whole mood, because 5 minutes didn't feel like work. It felt possible, doable, gentle, and so he sat up, opened the same audio story he had been listening to that week, and listened again, and after a while he opened his eyes and saw that more than 15 minutes had passed, and he felt proud again, not because he practiced for a long time, but because he kept his promise on a day when he felt tired, and this made him understand another important truth. Discipline does not require strength on good days. Discipline matters most on the quiet, tired, lonely days, because those are the days when your future self is built. And as I tell you this part of Daniel's story, I want you to think about your own life, your own routines, your own habits, because maybe you also want to improve your English, or maybe you want to improve something else, something personal, something meaningful, and maybe you think that discipline is hard, that it requires force or perfection. But I want you to remember what Daniel learned. Discipline grows from small promises, not big demands, and when you turn those promises into routines, you free your mind from the stress of deciding every day, and your brain begins to work with you instead of against you. And this is why routine is powerful, not because it is strict, but because it is stable, and stability creates peace, and peace creates consistency, and consistency creates progress. And as the days continued, Daniel began to notice that his routine was shaping other parts of his life too. He started waking up a little earlier without trying. He felt calmer during stressful moments, and even when life felt busy, he no longer felt lost, because he had one small thing he could control, his daily English practice, and that one thing gave him a sense of direction, a sense of stability, a sense of quiet confidence, and he realized that discipline is not only about learning something, it is about becoming someone reliable, someone steady, someone who shows up for himself, and this new identity made him feel stronger inside, not louder, but stronger in a quiet, grounded way. And one Saturday morning, he decided to take a walk in the park while listening to an English episode about everyday conversations. And as he walked along the path, feeling the cool morning air on his face, he suddenly understood almost everything in the recording, not every single word, but the meaning, the flow, the feeling, and he stopped walking for a moment, surprised, because he had never understood English so easily before, and he laughed quietly to himself, looking at the trees, thinking, "This is working," and it was at this moment that he felt a new kind of motivation, not the loud kind that shouts, "Let's change everything today," but the soft kind that whispers, "Keep going," and that whisper became his companion, his guide, his friend, and as the sun rose higher, he continued walking, listening, breathing, learning, and feeling grateful for the small routine that had brought him so far. And this marks the beginning of a deeper change in Daniel's life, a change that would continue to grow as we move into the next part of his story, because discipline is not only about routine, but about how routine shapes the way you see yourself. And in the second half of Section 2, we will explore how Daniel begins to face new challenges and discovers a deeper understanding of why discipline matters not only for English learning, but for living with clarity, purpose, and quiet confidence. And as Daniel continued his slow walk through the park, listening to the soft English conversation flowing through his headphones, he began to understand something deeper about himself, something he had never taken time to consider before. And it was this gentle realization that life becomes calmer when you stop fighting with yourself every day, because for many years he had lived in a quiet battle between what he wanted to do and what he actually did, and that battle left him feeling tired, guilty, and frustrated. But now that he had a simple routine, the battle had almost disappeared, and with that disappearance came a surprising sense of peace. And as he sat on a wooden bench under a tree, watching people walk dogs and families laugh in the distance, he felt an unusual calm spreading inside him, a feeling he could only describe as freedom, and he thought about how strange it was that discipline, a word that once felt heavy and difficult, was now giving him freedom. Freedom from stress, freedom from doubt, freedom from his old habits of delaying things he cared about. And as he leaned back on the bench, he closed his eyes and let the warm sunlight touch his face, and in that quiet moment he made a small but powerful promise to himself. I will protect this routine. And when he opened his eyes again, he felt a little stronger, a little clearer, a little more connected to his path. And when he returned home that afternoon, he wrote down a simple note on a piece of paper and placed it on his desk. The note said, "Just 5 minutes every day," and he smiled because this sentence was not just a study rule anymore. It was a symbol of who he was becoming. And over the next several days, something interesting happened. Not dramatic, not loud, but meaningful. Daniel began to notice that his discipline in English practice started influencing other small choices too. He began drinking more water without thinking about it. He cleaned his room more often. He opened his windows to let sunlight in, and he even started organizing his work desk at the office. And each of these small actions built on each other, making him feel more capable, more in control, and more present. And one evening, while sitting at his kitchen table with a cup of tea, he wondered why discipline in one area of life affects other areas so naturally. And after thinking for a long moment, he understood the answer. When you trust yourself in one thing, you begin to trust yourself in everything. And that thought filled him with a gentle warmth, because it meant his journey with English was changing more than his language skills. It was changing his identity, and identity changes everything. And a few days later, Daniel had a moment that tested him. A moment that could have broken his routine if he were still the old version of himself, because that week was unusually busy. Work became stressful. His manager asked him to finish an important report, and he spent long hours staring at spreadsheets, numbers, and charts, feeling his energy fade day by day. And by the time he reached Thursday night, he felt completely drained, his mind tired, his body heavy, and his eyes half closed as he sat on his couch. And the old Daniel would have said, "I will skip today, I deserve a break." But something inside him shifted, something that discipline had been building slowly and quietly, and instead of skipping,